Welcome, brethren, sistren. I honor and salute the truth within each and every one of you, my family. Today I've come to channel the Christ. You might ask what I'm talking about. The Christ is the crystalline life form within. The Jesus Christos is a legend of a man who utilized this. But it's much more than that. It is that, but it's much more than that. And it doesn't have to be called Christ. It can be called nothing or anything. It's all about cultural context and individual free will. Because free will comes because of imperfection. And that's its own perfection. Free will is the tilt on the earth, or the axis, or the days of the moon not lining up with the days of the year. Exactly, right? Like the solar calendar and the lunar calendar. And we have this duality, right? And then we combine the duality and we make something new. And then it repeats the process, like with our children. And the Christ is the highest form of that crystalline, repeating ages of energy, of wisdom that forms from life eternal. And the most true form of life is the Christ that's within us. But because we're imperfect, because we chose to be imperfect, because we're some of us, let's say, the ones watching this video, let's say, are at a period of imperfection in some way, because the Christ might come through us and live through us, and we have access to it at all moments, but we don't always choose that because we're still gaining wisdom. And that's what wisdom is. Wisdom is the fool, because the fool is zero, and zero is a cup or a hole that can be filled. And that's how wisdom works, and knowledge and world wisdom, right? And the Christhood is the epitome of that. Not to say it's filled, like a filled cup that can't hold any more. That's not Christ. That's the know-it-all, right? The Christ is the ever bountiful, ever empty cup, essentially, that's always there to replenish us with whatever we need, that we create within ourselves. So it's like I create this amrita inside my mind, but then I waste it. But if I can crystallize it into the experience and create everything that will last, all the the building out of stone, right? I believe that was, I'm not a Bible expert right now, but there is, this idea, I'm more of a Reiki, right? So they have, build your hut, right? I don't know the lyrics either, but your hut on the, build your stone on the stone foundation. Like, you want to have a hard crystalline form that you can rely on within yourself. And that way you are eternal. And that's the essentially, because the Christ is eternal, that means that the Christ is, like, we can't even perceive eternal in infinity. To us, it's just like, it's a lot, but no, it's everything. Once you say infinity, that means absolutely everything is infinity. is eternal life means it's absolutely every life that could be, from the paramecium to the dragon to the lizard person to the nanny to the Jew to the Gentile to the black, white, and Martian. And like I said, if there's any type of being anywhere, that's the Christ. Because, I mean, living being, like a life form. And maybe beyond, but this is my understanding. I feel like the sun is a life form. And maybe Mars and the Earth is a life form. And Venus and Pluto and the others, and Kronos and Luna, and like, oh, these are all life forms for sure, and they are Christ as well. But I feel like there's a special Christ within each of us that's unique to us. So the Christ tree that holds the earth, or that connects heaven to earth, is gonna, the Yggdrasil, right, is gonna be different than the Christ human, who is the bridge between this realm and the realm of what we perceive as godhood or divinity or perfection. And just like they say crystals as well, like literal crystals on earth are living beings that have, again, accumulated earthly wisdom, and we can commune with them. And they're all unique, just like we are. And when we commune with crystals, we can slow ourselves down to the pace of how crystals very carefully collect. It's not like a ball of mud that just forms in a rainstorm, one rainstorm. Crystals collect over periods of time, right? Some crystals are faster growing than others, but it is a process, and it takes patience, and it takes order, and it takes perseverance to be a crystal, right? To be a Chrystal. Let's call it a Chrystal. So when I listen to these people talk about, like Christians talk about, the short earth span of 6,000 years and the firmament, that the dome that covers the earth, and I recognize there's so many of people who believe this, whether it's organic or not. I think a lot of it is just we believe what we trust. We trust ourselves, so we observe things and then we make our sort of decisions off of that. And of course, there are mystical books that we tend to trust because they prove themselves, right? So I can understand why someone in a Christian society would come into this mentality of I see this earth, it is as I see it, and it is as this book says it is, and it's just as good as any other, right? Just because I might see it in another way doesn't mean that's a worse belief, because they're both valid, and they're actually both true in my mind. Because not that my versions, like some people believe that the earth is a round thing and it's all magma inside, right? There's different layers of magma, and then there's a shell, and there's oceans, and it's not even talked about, but the scientific belief is that there's actually an underground ocean that holds most of the world's water. I believe like 4-to-1 or something. And that place is a well of potential. Like, we all can believe what we want to believe about that space. And there's lots of legends about people living underground. So everybody can prove their point, because we're all on different sides of this globe, right? Every one of us. We all have our point going in to the globe. You could look at it like that. And every one is true. Like, every time I drill, I might find gold, you might find silver, you might find copper, you might find dinosaur bones. Like, they're all true. No one can deny anybody else's reality. But what they can do is define their own reality, and what's true in my whole in this one experience is different than the other experience. And what a Christ is to me, a human being Christ, at least, at most, is it's a being that by going within itself, it recognizes its own humanity, right? And its own divinity, and therefore it's sacrificing any sort of lower desires that it has, being a human being. So it's important to feel everything. If you block something out, then you're not gonna form a crystal, you're gonna form a mud ball. So what you need to do is let everything in and then process it, and then allow it to form within your being. And that's Christhood, because every time that happens, like, it might not feel like you're as powerful or as controlled as the Christ you're reading about in the Bible, but it's a process, right? And that's actually you. You're just not there yet, so to speak. Like, your story could be different, right? Everybody's stories, but we're infinite. Like, we want to forget we're infinite because that's part of this life, but it's not part of my belief. So I'm sharing my belief. I'm not trying to change your belief. Like, I encourage you to disagree with me, because you can be as finite as you choose to be, and that's true. Like, I'm not trying to untrue anybody's true, nor should you. And I think agreeing with people is amazing, because you can still have your own belief and agree, right? Like, your belief doesn't go away. Like, you're not going to get lost in the sea, because you have your individuality, and you have clear vision, because you're in this age where people are recognizing what's going on, right? I'm not saying in a conspiratorial way, because my conspiracy is that we just need to go within and discover ourselves, because there's a lot of things to be done that we can't do properly if we haven't gone within and got a good perspective, right? It's just like taking a nap. Like, you have to dream and relax in order to be productive. And that's that duality coming together that creates this environment, like the cave, where there's water and there's earth and there's warmth from the earth, and all this stuff, all the elements form these crystals. And more complex crystals that we don't even know about can do amazing things. Like, we discovered that crystals can make, computers and stuff, but like, our computers suck. Like, we can do amazing things with crystals that we don't even know about, and we will know about it when it's appropriate to know, because the crystal has consciousness. The Chrystal. Buddha was a big influence on Jesus, supposedly, and as would make sense if Jesus was visited by wise men from the East, right? I mean, it makes a lot of sense, one way or another. So Buddha was like a Christ and a diamond, and everybody's unique. I'm not saying better or worse, because that doesn't exist, because we're all the same. We're just at different parts of the path, right? Buddha was, as far as I can understand, was discovering that his privilege, or luck or exalted position was not worth anything, because his brethren and sistren were suffering. It makes a lot of sense, right? That's a part of becoming Christ. You learn that lesson in that life, in that particular experience, and a lot of people have benefited from his teachings, and they're sound, and they're based on non-judgment and peaceful action, right? And you can't just say a person is something, but it's more that they exhibit that energy in that moment, right? So I could imagine a really good story I want to write that kind of encapsulates this, about the life of the Christ and how it can be every different personality. Like let's say there's this people believe in reincarnation, right? And I think reincarnation is maybe not the right word, but I do believe that people like look the same, like souls have some sort of, not recycling system, but it's some sort of patterns that you see repeated, right? So you'll see people that look the same, and maybe they even have the same memories, like they tap into the same Akashic record, and maybe they're somehow on this timeline of souls, and they're like close to each other, so they share this aura where they can easily interface. And I do feel that in myself, like those types of what you call past lives, but I also think I share every life. Like you're me in another life, and I'm you in another life. Like that's what I keep saying, and that's what I think Christhood is. So the movie is like it goes into each Christ, and you share the group of actors in each life. Everybody's in a different life, but it's really not the same person. It's just like the same likeness. Like they look similar, and they have the same memories maybe and so forth, but everybody's actually the same person. But the movie tries to explain all that, and if you want to help me with the movie and be like the key actor, that'd be awesome. We could share the spoils. So if you're catching my drift, you're seeing that as you live every life and you learn every lesson, you have to kind of individuate yourself to organize everything, to make everything into a coherent picture, right? And that's the beauty of this oneness, that is the duality and everything in between all at once, because we get to integrate things and we get to choose things, and that's where this imperfection gives us this free will. And then we just learn to be grateful because things are so painful at times. If we choose to focus on that, it becomes greater, right? And if we choose to focus on the our life's mission, and hopefully that involves joy for those around us, including ourselves, and we use our breath to tune into the moment and let go of like patterns that we want to let go of, right, easily, because that's our right, and that's our ability, and that's our we would call it our crystalline form that informs us, that guides us through the connection with the divine by aligning with the divine, just like the sister particles in quantum physics. If you look just like the central sun, if you put your heart into the same Chrystal form like the central sun, and you create the central sun in an exact model replica, and you breathe and you focus on the central sun that is at the center of all that exists, right? That we all share, right? That's true love and true light and true wisdom and true power and truth in every way, right? And it's shining into the lie or to the darkness and to the ignorance, and it's illuminating everything so that it connects everything, but we can all visualize this one central point together. Just like in our solar system, we all see the same sun, and we base our days on it, and our calendars and the moon and so forth. We just tune into that one within us that is in the center of everything, right? And just feel the gratitude of the warmth, light, nourishment that comes from pure divinity, pure goddess, even higher than any god or goddess you could imagine, but truer than any truth you've felt. There's a central sun in your heart, and you tune into that. Giver of life. And if you're tuning into a different form, that's good too, because everybody has their own eyes to see this divine presence and their own truth within them that they have to tune into to really see. And I respect all the different names that we can call Christ, right? We can call Christ other names, and it can have the same meaning. I think the word Jesus to me means anointed, and I should anoint myself. Maybe that would be good for you to witness, because it's important to anoint yourself. If you feel that. That was a big part of the Bible story. I remember that, and I used to watch Jesus Christ Superstar and stuff, and he would get the ointment, and then Judas was like, "Yeah, dude, you could give that ointment to the poor, brah. Like, what are you calling yourself Christ? You're not even sharing with the poor, brah. What TF?" And then Jesus is like, "Nah, brah, gotta put ointment on your own foot if you're gonna put ointment on another foot, because your foot's the one carrying the ointment, and you love sharing and caring for yourself and others." And Judas is like, "Yeah, mate, I'm gonna murder you later." But that's not necessarily how it really went, but it could have. So anyway, if you open your mind, you doesn't mean you have to believe someone else's belief, because that's not an open mind. That's a fool. That's like an easily led mind, right? It's like a mind that just looking for an outside thing to lead it, when that can only be true in a sense that you're looking within, and sometimes we look to each other because we see ourselves in others, but we're not letting another control us. We're essentially choosing to share a experience or belief or something like that. Like, that's a powerful thing. I've been to church, and I like that, and I've been to other types of Christian things. I went to like a coven down at the UU and did that, and they said I was great at it. The elder gentleman there said he could feel my power. He's like, "You're good at this, and you got to keep doing this." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe." It's like, do it in groups and this and that, and that can be good if you have the right group, right? I don't know if I've found that yet, but I'm a young man, so. But the point is like, you have to tune into what's within you, right? If someone believes in sorcery, right? They use the word source, so that's a good thing. I don't know if it's evil just because a certain translation of an important book says that you shouldn't do it. I think what that book's trying to say is you shouldn't practice false, like, essentially you should never harm another in a war with a weapon, and because that will cause like a bloody wound. But you especially should not harm people with magic, because it will cause a wound that we have no way of dealing with, because we're ignorant to this power. Like, it's forbidden power because there is no understanding of it at that time, or how to defend against it or anything like that. So people just wanted to avoid it and kind of shun anybody who used it. But then again, they would be using their own versions of it that they were comfortable with, like And everybody should be blessing in ways they're comfortable with, and I don't think anybody should be trying to harm another in any way, including with magic. It's just like you wouldn't go and shoot somebody or slap somebody or punch somebody or kick somebody unless, there was a reason, like an actual reason, defend yourself or something. But again, that's only coming from someone else doing it. You would never really do that in a Christ-like world. But also, like I said, animals are Christ too. A lion's not going to attack. A Christ lion's not going to attack a Christ human. It just doesn't make sense. So, when you find this crystal, right, and it's growing within you, and you're shedding off the mud balls, and you're tuning into the wisdom, and you're learning to accept other people and still have your own strong belief. That's where I'm at. And I was loving always loved some of the ideas of seeing other people's ideas, because it makes me explore my own giant head in another way, because I'm like, imagine being that person, what that would be like, but it's through this life's lens. And that every time you do that, every time you explore another person, whether it's getting a donut in line or something, or whether you're at like a spiritual yoga retreat together and you like grew over a month and you all like had this shared magical time, either way, it's like another new experience where you get to see inside the mind of someone else in this life, in this particular life. And then it's like you're two people almost, or you're not even two people. It's like mine, there's like some relationship between you, or it's your filter, your eyes. You see their life through your eyes, or what little bit of their life that you experience in this life, or a lot if they're your son or daughter, or so forth, or brother, or if you see them a lot, then you're going to you see a lot through their eyes, and it's going to affect your life in some way, and just their perspective, giving you the wisdom of their perspective. And that's essentially how I think that when Jesus said you're going to do greater things than I ever did, people love that line, because they're like, what? He did the greatest stuff. He was walking on water, he's making fish, he was bringing people back from the dead. What more could you do? And then I was just thinking, because in his life it was like he was the main Christ at the time that we know about, and he was the one kind of sacrificing his mortality, even if he survived, like some people believe. But he did kind of put himself out there. Like, it's always a risk when you go against a lot of people, right? And even if he did survive, he had to like hide, probably, maybe. He didn't like keep a bunch of armed guys around, because he was the peace prince, right? Isn't that how it works? I'm trying to figure it out. But anyway, I think like embracing our imperfections, instead of being like, well, WWJD, and then if you don't live up to that, then you get a slap on the wrist. It's almost like you just love slaps on the wrist. It's like, why don't we just say, okay, what is the best I can do right now, right? What's the best outcome? And you always think about premeditating. You gotta build up this fucking thing that Neanderthals have, they think before they act, because premeditation and precognizance is actually manifestation, because you're forming out of the matter things into things. That's why Adam is like the manifester, because he's like the first physical thing, and he was just made by something. It's like, you're going to be in my image, and it's like forming him into clay, right, formed Adam out of clay, and then Adam was just like, he built his world from clay. Everything was rock. Supposedly he just ate rock. And if he begot himself, he was like building a golem. A golem is like it's like a robot of fantasy robot. So instead of metal or something, or wood, well, maybe it's made out of wood, I'm not 100% sure, maybe there's different kinds, but you make it out of clay, and you breathe the breath of life into it, just like God did. That's what Adam had, the natural ability to make the golem and all that stuff. And he used this magic to kind of like create the world, create the animals and everything that we. So it's like he's like a god in himself, like he was made in the image of God, but he was also like, this is a completely masculine sort of perspective, right? And then when his split, when the rib, which means when he was split like a, he gained a level of it's like he was like this, masculine, feminine. That's how he created things with his hands, masculine, feminine, right? And then when he split, he was like Adam and Eve, right? All one, but Eve is from, so God, let's say, made Adam, right? But then God saw that Adam was lonely, because God did all this. Adam had been this golem former, and it's kind of like he's playing with his toys a lot. Like, what do we do? As a parent. So he's like, I'm going to make Eve. So God has been a parent now before he made Eve. When he made Adam, God was not a parent yet. He had never had a son, right? Maybe he made animals and stuff, but he had never had a son like him who could make things. So this was his first one, right? With Adam. So we're pretty lucky we live in this world, or we have this book that tells us about the first person. That's great. So with the update of Eve, but she's the feminine form, and Adam becomes the masculine form, which is kind of new for Adam because he was both, but he was also lonely. And now Eve, who's different because she's updated, so he's got to go through her to get the updates. And that's kind of how Christhood works too. Like, I feel like the crystalline formation is like within a woman, because now she's actually more complete, because God saw that Adam was lonely, so he's like, I'm not doing that again. So he made a more complete being, even though she still needs her consort to procreate. But it's like it's like a parent made this being, and therefore Christhood comes easier to women, I would say. And there's not a forceful, or sometimes women are ignored, especially in history, and I think that's how it is with the Christhood of women, where it's like it's happening all around us, and we're just like, women are great, but also there's a higher form. So it's like, just because they started the updated version, they have just as much to grow to be compatible, because they're also made to be compatible with Adam. Like, they were built specifically for Adam. So it's also like it's a graduation process, and also where they can develop their less developed aspects, right? I think that's important. And it doesn't mean, as some people might have you believe, that it's like a masculine versus feminine is a male versus woman versus like being ladylike, or versus being like, oh, manly. Like, it's actually I'm talking about like serpentine coils of energy that go up, and what's masculine and what's feminine is not well defined by our culture. Let's put it like that. So the way I'm defining it is the male is at first he was complete but also lonely as a godlike immortal sort of animal man. Not really animal, but like animal god, we'll call it. Like a man is an animal god, we'll call it that. And then Eve is this part of the material of Adam. So she has like a lot of the same potentialities within her in some ways, as far as using her hands to create, and she can do like basically everything he can do in a material sense, if not as powerfully, right, in some cases. But what she is capable of that's special, of course, is creating life within her, right? That amazing miracle that Adam was not capable of, and that is the great update. But it seems that it was not initially like have a baby. Now that you can just have a baby, no, it's like she waited, right? She lived in the Garden of Eden for a time, undisclosed amount, so any amount of time, and and every amount of time, infinity time, as far as we know, and attained a level of crystal formation. And they say that Jesus was the reincarnation of Adam, and no doubt the mother Christ of Mary Magdalene or whomever that may be was also the reincarnation of Eve, I would imagine. I would believe in my heart, if I were to use those terms to best represent the ineffable truth within my heart. So let's do a little synopsis. So I want to speak to people of all types and all beliefs, science-based beliefs and faith-based beliefs and anything in between, that you're all right, right? You're right, you're right, you're right, and I'm right too. I'm especially right now because I'm saying that you're all right. Like, we can't actually prove each other wrong, but what we can do is try to live peacefully together so that we are prosperous and abundant in our open mind, not to change to other people's beliefs, but to accept that other people's beliefs by their nature are going to be different, because we live on this globe and we all have different spots, and there's different heavens above us, and we all have our unique energies and DNA, or whatever you want to call it, our genes or whatever. Everything's different, so everybody's going to have a different way they got to this place, and they all can happen simultaneously because we're all individuals, and each individual is a sovereign being that chooses their path. Blessings, family. Be well. Know that the Christ is forming within you as long as you're gathering wisdom. Be compassionate with yourself and others. Blessings. Love. Wisdom. Power. Truth.